Hi, Kim from the Shamrock Quilt Studio. I'm coming to you today to share with you where I am in the process of making this EPP quilt I'm calling Purple Pursuit. And we're getting very close to having the top done on this. Now, what I've done so far, I'm not sure exactly what we've covered, what we haven't covered, but I'm going to run through it real quickly and bring you up to date. I finished the rectangular shape of this quilt, and now I am putting on a white border. This border, just so we remember, use the side that measures properly, it'd be good, is just short of 3.5 inches. And what I did, because I was limited on the fabric that I had for this, I ran a seam along the edge of this border at 1/4 inch. It's just a regular running seam. And that's the side of the fabric that I am joining to the EPP pieces. And my reasoning behind that was to give a little bit more support, because there's only going to be 1/4 inch here underneath the purple pieces in some areas. In some areas it's going to be 1.5 inches or more where that pattern juts out. But in the shallow areas, the little valleys here, there won't be much of an overlap. If I had unlimited fabric, I would have put a wider strip underneath just to ensure that we had some more fabric back there. But since we were trying to do this with the fabric we had on hand, that's why I did it. Now, and sometimes I had put in the little white squares here. Let's get this piece. I was trying putting in the white squares in these areas where we have the valleys to make it more of an even in to the design. But what I quickly determined was I liked the way it looked best when it looks like it's just sitting on that background fabric. So the border, I took all those white pieces on the edge off, and then I've appliqued the purple EPP pieces to this white border. And at first I was going to do just a border that lapped over on the edges in a square fashion, because that is the easiest to do. But as I started working on this, I realized I probably do have enough fabric to do a mitered border. So that's what I'm going to do. So right now, what I'm doing is I'm just pinning from about 1.5 inches, 2 inches in from the design, and that's the point that I start sewing. On this one, I started right here, right there. So I've got a little bit here that's not sewn down, and then I'm sewing all the way across to about the same point on the other end. So at the corners, it's loose. It is not sewn down. And I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. I think I've got 2.5 sides done now. So I'll be finished with this in a couple of days. As I mentioned before, I don't sew 8 hours a day, so it takes me a little bit longer than someone who would be working on this all day. So I think in a couple of days I'll have this done. And then I might do a rare evening filming to show you how I do those borders in a mitered fashion. I did find another strip of fabric in the sewing room that I did not realize I had when I kind of did a rough lay down of the fabric to make sure I had enough. So I feel more confident about that. And I did cover mitered borders in our double wedding ring quilt top, in that if you'd like to go back and reference that as well. But I think when I get to the point that I have all this sewn on, I will bring the camera back into the sewing room so I can show you very quickly how those go together. And it's really on something this small where you probably, let's see if we just line these up. These are pinned the way the mitered was going to be. It's only a seam really that's going to stretch out 2 or 3 inches. So it's going to be really easy to do. And just basically what we're going to do is we're going to have it all sewn except for that point like we talked about. We're going to get this together. We're going to place it on the table. We're going to mark it with our fabric markers using a square with a diagonal line on it and mark it, and then we're going to stick it on the sewing machine and stitch it up real quickly, because remember, they're not sewn in on the corner. Where did the corner go? There it is. They're not sewn in, so I can take this corner and put it on the sewing machine and sew it, bring it out, make sure it's correct, trim it off, and then applique those corners on very quickly. At that point, the top is going to be finished, and we're going to get ready to move on to sandwiching this with the purple background and the batting so that we can start working towards quilting this. I don't believe at this point I've covered sandwiching on any of my videos, so that's going to be something exciting, and I'll show you how I do that. Usually I use a 2 or 3 step process to make sure I've got it on and it's all smooth, no tucks or rolls in the fabric, and that batting is laying down nicely. I don't typically stitch a basting together. Usually I pin it. If I'm using my Grace frame, I don't even pin it. I put it on the frame, and the frame itself does the no basting method. But for this one, what we're going to use is we're going to use some curved safety pins that are designed for quilting to clip it into place so that we can put it on the hoop and quilt it. And this particular project, we're not going to heavily quilt this. We're going to use something, a design that I think is going to be enough to hold the batting in place, but not so much that it's going to take either a lot of time or a lot of effort to do this. Because as I stated before, I'm going to be using this kind of like a dresser scarf, not a tabletop, not a tablecloth, but like a scarf or a doily or something on my dining room table. So it's not going to need the durability that a quilt would need. So I'm going to lightly quilt it, and I am going to do that by hand and film some of that so you can see how I do that. So that's where we are. We're moving right along on this project. I expect that we can get it finished with the applique and the miter corners this week. And then our next video after that, we're going to be sandwiching the quilt, and we'll talk about quilting, actual hand quilting this, the thread that I'm going to use and the needles that I prefer, and then show you the hoop and how I put it in the hoop. So moving right along to quilting. And fortunately, something this size, even hand quilting it is the way I'm planning to do it is not going to take that long. So I think it's going to move along really smoothly and quickly from this point on. And before you know it, we'll be finished with this project and ready to move on to something different. So I'm glad that you were here with us today. If you have any questions or comments, please be sure to add those below. I always welcome your comments. And I would like for you to subscribe to our channel. That's the best way that you can support us to help bring more videos to you, and also allows us to do more projects so that we can see something new and exciting. And I do have a new project. I was going to work on a original design as our next project, but I found something that I think is going to be very interesting. It is a little bit of a challenge if you are new to applique. It may be a project that you will be able to learn a lot of techniques and information. Applique is a skill that is used for a lot of things. For example, the basic thing that you use sewing for in your everyday life is either to do something like repair a rip in a piece of clothing or an article around your home, to hem something, or to sew a buttonhole on. And applique is essentially hemming, and it's just taking that skill and refining it enough so you don't see any of the stitches or you see them in a decorative manner. And so anything you learn in the applique realm would probably be of use in a hemming situation. So that's how we take the skills that we learn, that are specific to sewing and relate them to our everyday life and vice versa. So like I said, I'm glad that you were here with us today. We hope to see you next time. Thank you for stopping by the Shamrock Quilt Studio.